Johnny Carson stood out as one of the 20th century's biggest stars, hosting The Tonight Show for 30 years. But his life was not as glamorous as it seemed in public, especially his relationship with his 3 sons. From not attending his son's funeral to rejecting another's girlfriend, what really happened to Johnny Carson's 3 sons? Johnny Carson's journey into the world of late-night television fame began with a college romance that blossomed into a 14-year marriage. In 1949, Johnny got married to Jody Morrill Walcott, whom he had met during their time at the University of Nebraska. The couple settled in California, and there they welcomed their 3 sons, Christopher, Richard, and Cory. At first, their life together seemed perfect. But as Johnny's career took off with the success of The Tonight Show, the pressures of his newfound fame started to strain their relationship. To make matters worse, Johnny had a troubling relationship with alcohol, and he often went on a rampage against his first wife while they were still together. According to the biography Carson the Magnificent written by Bill Zimi, Johnny became 2 different people when he would drink, and whoever he had been only moments prior would be instantly replaced by an unrecognizable hellraiser. As time went on, he and his wife started cheating on each other, and that contributed to the growing tension between them. In fact, Jody would sometimes dance on tabletops at parties, taunt and ooze caustic sarcasm, and flirt with different men in front of Johnny to get a reaction out of him. By 1963, the marriage had deteriorated beyond repair, causing them to get divorced. The split was really scandalous, with public fights over alimony and his wife accusing him of trading wives in like cars. After their marriage ended, Johnny Carson took his 3 sons with him into his next 3 marriages. But his relationship with them wasn't as good as it seemed in public. Although they were a warm family in front of the world, in private, his sons were gradually moving away from him. That brought up the constant question of what really happened to Johnny Carson's 3 sons, Christopher Carson. Let's start with Johnny Carson's first son, Christopher Carson, often called Chris. He was born on November 7, 1950, and was the eldest of Johnny Carson's 3 sons with his first wife, Jody. While his father was a household name as the host of The Tonight Show, Chris largely stayed out of the public eye, leading a life that contrasted with the limelight that defined his father's career. Growing up in the shadow of his father's fame, Chris experienced the complexities of being part of a high-profile family. Despite the public's fascination with his father's television persona, Chris's upbringing was marked by the challenges of navigating family dynamics under intense scrutiny. His parents' marriage, which ended when he was young, was reportedly troubled, with Johnny Carson acknowledging in a 1967 interview that an honest, clean divorce was preferable to an unhappy marriage. This sentiment reflected the difficult environment in which Chris and his brothers were raised. Although Chris was mostly out of the spotlight, he was seen in public many times, like during his father's final broadcasts of The Tonight Show in 1992. Also, in the 1980s, Chris's personal life gathered a lot of media attention due to a public child support dispute with his former partner, Tanena Love Green. The couple had a daughter together, Crystal Love Carson, born in 1986. But their separation led to legal proceedings that revealed Chris's actual financial situation. It turned out that he was very dependent on his father financially. Chris was working as a golf instructor, but he received a lot of financial support from his father every year. Johnny provided Chris with $35,000 annually in addition to purchasing him cars and a home. Chris was living in Florida, where he was known to be an avid golfer. One of the Carson family friends, Howard Smith, recently revealed Chris was an avid golfer. And so when he used to come, he lived in Florida, Fort Lauderdale. When he used to come to visit his dad, he would bring his clubs because I would take them. We would play golf together, and John wouldn't play golf. John did play golf one time, but he would just ride along with us. Chris Carson passed away earlier this year at the age of 74. The news was confirmed by Howard Smith during an appearance on the Nostalgia Tonight podcast. Howard heard of Chris's death from Johnny's nephew, Jeff Sotzing, who told him that Chris had died a week before their conversation. Although Chris was supported by his father for a long time, they also had a strained relationship because of how busy Johnny was and a major conflict over his granddaughter, who was half black. Johnny Carson, the beloved host of The Tonight Show, was known for his quick wit and charm on television. However, behind the scenes, his personal life was marked by a lot of complex relationships, including that with his son Chris and Chris's relationship with Tanena Love Green. According to insider reports, it was revealed that when Johnny learned of his son's relationship with Tanena, who is black, he was very unsupportive and he even disapproved of their relationship. Many sources also revealed that Johnny threatened to cut Chris off if he continued the relationship, and this led to a lot of tension within their relationship. At first, it caused Chris to distance himself from his father, and it worsened their relationship. Remember that Chris depended a lot on his father's support every year. But as he divorced Tanena, Chris began to distance himself from her and their daughter Crystal. Because of the strained relationship, Tanena and Crystal faced a lot of financial hardships. Although Chris was getting financial support from his father, he was later ordered by a Florida judge to pay child support for Crystal, but the support was very minimal and Crystal spent a lot of time in public assistance programs. Now that Crystal is an adult and her father and grandfather have passed away, she talked about the impact of Johnny's rejection on her life while growing up. She remembered sending holiday cards to Johnny Carson, but he never even acknowledged them, causing a worse relationship between Johnny and Chris. Once when she was 16, Tanena took her to visit Johnny, but he reportedly ordered them off his property, telling them to never come back. Despite all the challenges, Tanena remained a steadfast support for her daughter. She once said that if Johnny had taken the time to meet Crystal, he would have been proud of her accomplishments. Tanena also emphasized that they had to rely on themselves, stating, "No one has had to help us, only God." While Johnny Carson had a complicated relationship with his first son, Chris, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter, his connection with his second son, Rick, was strange, especially since he passed away early. Rick Carson, Richard Walcott Carson, mostly known as Rick, was born June 16, 1952, and was Johnny Carson's middle son with his first wife, Jody. Unlike his famous father, Rick led a life away from the public eye, carving out his own path in the world of photography. After serving in the U.S. Navy, Rick pursued his passion for art and became a professional photographer. He settled in North Hollywood and maintained a pretty low profile, preferring to stay out of the limelight. Despite his father's celebrity status, Rick's life was marked by a desire for privacy and a focus on his craft. Rick's relationship with his father, Johnny Carson, was described as warm and affectionate, unlike his relationship with Chris, which ended up strained because of conflicts with his marriage. A close friend and former colleague of Rick's shared fond memories of their time together and said Rick was a sweet, fun, talented guy who in addition to his other jobs picked all of the show's great music, which became one of its signatures. The bond between Rick and his friends extended beyond careers. His friend also recalled saying, "On a few occasions, Rick invited me to go to his dad's estate in Bel Air on St. Cloud Road. I'll always remember how nice Johnny was to me on and off the tennis court. Rick and I would swim, hang by the pool, and drink beers. Johnny would sit with us for a bit. He was relaxed and funny as heck, as opposed to the many accounts I've read of him being distant and withdrawn in private." Tragically, Rick's life was cut short at the age of 39. On June 21, 1991, he passed away in a car accident on California's Central Coast. According to authorities, Rick was taking photographs when he accidentally fell from an embankment by the road. It seemed like he was taking photographs, but when he was distracted, he fell and passed away. Rick's death was a devastating blow, not only to his friends, but especially to his family. It was a major blow to Johnny Carson, who was deeply affected by the loss. He took time off from The Tonight Show to mourn, but made a move that caused many to question him and his relationship with his second son. Johnny Carson mourns. When Rick Carson died in June 1991 at just 39, the loss ripped open a private wound in Johnny Carson's life. Although Johnny chose not to attend his son's memorial, as he explained, saying, "Where I go, the press will go. I don't want it to turn into a circus." But the weight of Rick's death was deeply felt behind the scenes. Johnny's absence from the funeral was a decision rooted in his protective instinct to protect his family from media spectacle. According to a close friend, Johnny was worried that his fame would be a threat. He worried that if he allowed himself to be seen at the service, it would shift attention away from his son and turn the mourning into a show. The public reaction was a mix of sympathy and curiosity. The audiences were used to seeing Johnny as the consummate professional and were shocked to learn how deeply shaken he was behind the scenes. Many mentioned how unusual it was for him to break his wall of privacy. 3 weeks after Rick's death, Johnny returned to The Tonight Show and used the last minutes of his program to deliver what remains one of his most poignant on-air moments. As he looked into the camera, he said, "An exuberant young man, fun to be around. When Rick was around, you wanted to smile." He also added, saying, "He tried so darn hard to please. He had a laugh that was as contagious as could be." Luckily, he left some marvelous memories for the whole family, and that's what you kind of hang on to. Behind him, the monitors displayed a montage of Rick's photographs as a way to remember him by. They also played Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble's instrumental music, which set a reverent tone. That moment wasn't without tension. During the tribute, Fred de Cordova, the Tonight Show producer, gave Johnny a wrap-it-up cue, which was meant to keep the show on schedule. But since Johnny was talking about his son, whom he just lost, it struck a painful nerve. Johnny was furious, and after that he banned de Cordova from the studio floor for the remainder of his tenure. Rick's death marked a turning point in Johnny's life. According to co-author Mike Thomas, he lamented the fact that he was not much closer to his sons and recognized that he was married to The Tonight Show. That was his life. Mike had reflected, saying, "I don't think he knew how to be a father the way he wanted to be a father or the way he thought he should be a father. But when Ricky died, he was never the same. He would grieve for Ricky to the end of his life." Over time, those who knew him said Carson never fully emerged from the grief. He carried guilt over the emotional distance with his sons, and Rick's passing loomed over his later years as a poignant reminder of what had been lost. When asking what really happened to Johnny Carson's 3 sons, 2 of them have already passed away. But what's going on with his third son, Cory? Cory Carson. Cory William Carson, who was often called Cory, was born on November 2, 1953. And although he carried the name Cory at birth, his family and father came to call him Cory. In 1957, Johnny and Jody legally changed both Cory's and Rick's names to what we know them as today. Growing up, Cory and his brothers lived with the tension of a famous father who lived for performance, but was often emotionally distant at home. Cory later reflected on that tug-of-war in Carson the Magnificent, saying, "I understand my dad's foibles better than any, having been a lifetime study." He also added, "I am free of feeling unworthy, though that was a biggie many years ago." One of the sharper pains for Cory was watching Johnny's warmth toward child guests on The Tonight Show. He would chat with children on air for about 10 minutes while his own sons at home struggled to earn a fraction of that attention. Cory had captured the sting in these words, once saying, "Imagine witnessing the little guests that would frequent the show and having my dad absolutely enthralled with their every word. What did they have that we didn't? 10 minutes of material." Cory was barely in the limelight. And instead, he chose a more private path. He became a classical guitarist and recording artist, following a creative route that suited his temperament. After Johnny Carson passed away in 2005, Cory joined his brothers in private mourning, saying that they must have inherited the privacy gene. By 2025, Cory stood as the only surviving son of Johnny Carson, quietly maintaining his low-profile life. Little is confirmed about his current day-to-day life, but family friend Howard Smith gave a simple telling update. "Cory is still alive. But I don't know. They don't see anybody that much." Cory wasn't the only one that complained about the emotional distance that Johnny had with his sons, as all his other sons and even his wives experienced this. Once Johnny admitted that he didn't have time for his kids, but they turned out well. Johnny Carson was adored by millions as a master of late-night hosting, but he was less comfortable in the small, intimate spaces of family life. His sons often felt the gap between the man on stage and the father at home. Biographical work Carson the Magnificent describes how Johnny's deep affection was seldom expressed in overt displays. As one friend said, he had sired 3 sons who would also never quite believe they were unconditionally adored or at times much cared for. From early on, Johnny's commitment to The Tonight Show with its long hours, the travel and focus often meant that his sons were left to interpret his absence at home. The biography says that Johnny's protectiveness towards his children came with a brisk, tough love with sweet dashes of twinkle. This is a style that, though well-intended, frequently left his boys feeling emotionally starved. Cory Carson, the youngest, later reflected on the sting of watching his father laugh with child guests on the show, but offer a colder reserve to his own kids at home. Even as years passed, regret became a constant undercurrent. In his final Tonight Show broadcast in 1992, Johnny made one of the rare public acknowledgments. He said, "I realize that being the offspring of somebody who is constantly in the public eye is not easy. So guys, I want you to know I love you, and I hope your old man hasn't caused you too much discomfort. It would have been a perfect evening if their brother Rick had been here with us. But I guess life does what it's supposed to do and you accept it and go on." Johnny's fame brought vast success. But biographers suggest that his emotional inaccessibility left long shadows. Though he deeply loved his sons, He later confessed he was not much closer to his sons than he wanted to be. After Rick's death, that realization pained him, especially with a friend saying he would grieve for Ricky to the end of his life. But Johnny's rough relationship was not only with his sons, but also with his wives. From his first wife, even after their divorce, their relationship was very strained and hard on his sons. In 1990, Jody, who is Johnny Carson's first wife, filed a petition to increase her alimony payment from $13,500 per year to $120,000. She claimed her current support was no longer sufficient, saying she had been living in a small hotel with limited savings and dealing with serious medical and mental health issues. Johnny forcefully pushed back. He called the request a bold-faced holdup, accusing Walcott of trying to use the courts and media for unfavorable publicity. He pointed out that under their 1959 postnuptial agreement, she was receiving $15,000 per year plus provisions if his income exceeded a certain threshold. The case went to court, and in January 1991, a judge ruled against increasing her alimony. The judge cited the fact that Jody had remarried as one reason that her request failed. During this time, she made a pretty memorable quote, saying, "With men like this, wives are interchangeable. If you have a problem, you just trade it in for a new one, like a car." Aside from his relationship with Jody, he had 3 other wives, with 2 of them ending in divorce. It was like he wasn't made for marriage. Johnny's other wives. After divorcing his first wife in 1963, Johnny Carson didn't stay single for long. His second marriage was to Joanne Copeland that same year. Joanne was a model, flight attendant, and TV host. She encouraged Johnny in his early days as the Tonight Show host. Their marriage lasted nearly a decade. They divorced in 1972. Joanne reportedly cited the stress of Johnny's career and his struggles with alcohol among the difficulties. Shortly after, in 1972, Johnny married Joanna Holland, a former high-paid New York model he had met in 1971 at the 21 Club. Their courtship was intense, as Johnny would call her daily for a year, and their marriage lasted until 1985. Over time, the strain of Johnny's move with The Tonight Show from New York to California, lifestyle differences, and perhaps disappointing public scrutiny placed pressure on their relationship. Joanna filed for divorce in 1983, and the settlement was substantial. She was granted several properties, artworks, including a Picasso, and a monthly support payment. Finally, in 1987, Johnny married Alexis Moss. This fourth marriage is widely seen as the most stable and affectionate. Alexis was much younger than Johnny, and their relationship was quieter and less flashy than his previous ones. They stayed together until Johnny's death in 2005. Many who knew him later in life said Alexis was the real love of his life. But throughout his life, Johnny didn't only struggle with failed marriages, but also alcohol. In fact, alcohol is what ruined many of his marriages from the start. During his marriages, reports say Johnny's mood could shift sharply when he drank. Carson the Magnificent describes how, when sufficiently lubricated, he would go on a rampage, and whomever he had been only moments prior would be instantly displaced by an unrecognizable hellraiser. On some mornings, his former spouses would wake up to find bruises or emotional turmoil, not knowing exactly what had happened the night before. His second wife, Joanne, revealed a volatile pattern. She said, "I was married to 2 different people. He became a tiger. He had a low tolerance. He had blackouts." Joanne remembered one instance. He'd say, "I'm working my butt off and you're sleeping in bed. This is 3 o'clock in the morning." She was left cleaning everything up the next day. Then Johnny would apologize, vow to change, and repeat. During his third marriage to Joanna Holland, the same instability surfaced. She once said, "During that black drunk phase, I was scared. Sometimes anything could set him off. Those were scary times." In 1982, Johnny's problems with alcohol became public when he was arrested for drunk driving. He pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor, was fined $63, placed on 3 years probation, and ordered into an alcohol education program. Now, you know what really happened to Johnny Carson's 3 sons? What do you think about his relationship with them? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.